The descent began with silence. No rattle of landing gear. No announcements. Just the dim flicker of red emergency lights washing over the transport's grimy interior. The other prisoners shifted uneasily in their harnesses, but no one spoke. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was strangling, like the ship itself held its breath. Darius Vex stared through the viewport. Thalix. 9 loomed below, a gray, lifeless rock circling a dying star, its surface scarred with trenches, ice fractures, and faded ruins of something older than memory. The ship cut through its poisonous atmosphere like a blade through bone. A static, cracked voice broke the silence. "Welcome to Thalix, 9. You're not prisoners. You're subjects. This facility is a research station operated by the Galactic Dominion. Your survival is neither required nor expected. Observe protocol. Resist nothing." Elira, strapped across from Darius, let out a bitter breath. "Doesn't even pretend it's a prison." Darius didn't respond. He hadn't said a word since the cuffs were locked around his wrists back on Polaris Station. Most assumed he was just another broken man. The truth? He was observing. Not the guards, not the ship, not even the planet. The people, the fear, the cracks forming before anything had even begun. The ship jolted on landing. A side hatch groaned open. Harsh, metallic wind howled in. Guards in chitin armor. Insectoid cold, efficient. Motion with plasma lances. No words. Just gestures. Herding animals. Darius stepped onto the surface. The sky was thick with gray clouds. No sun. Just red twilight, bleeding through the smog. Towers loomed in the distance. Observation pylons bristling with surveillance tech. No fences. No walls. Just a vast, open terrain designed to break the mind. That was the genius of it. You weren't confined. You were abandoned. Humans scattered into the landscape. Some ran, some froze, some collapsed in panic. A man screamed until his throat gave out. No one stopped him. Darius walked. He passed a crater and found a stone ledge overlooking a gulch. He sat down back straight, breathing steady, as if he were in meditation or command. Time passed. 2 guards dragged in a new prisoner, a twitchy man with sunken eyes. They threw him to the ground and walked away. The man scrambled to his feet, trembling. He noticed Darius watching him and barked. "What are you staring at? You think you're better than me, huh?" Darius didn't blink. The man lunged. Darius sidestepped without effort, grabbed his arm, and twisted. Not enough to break, just enough to hurt. Then he whispered in the man's ear, quiet enough only he could hear. "We're not enemies. Not unless you want to be the first to die." The man froze. Darius released him, turned, and walked toward a jagged ridge to survey the terrain. Elira followed, keeping distance. "You're calm," she said after a while. "Too calm." Darius glanced at her. "You used to be with Terran forces." Elira nodded. "Recon. I was stationed on Ishtar 4 before the collapse. You were trained to survive harsh environments. Tell me, is this place designed for survival?" She hesitated, looked around. No shelter, no supplies, no guidance. "No, it's not," she admitted. Darius smirked. "Exactly. This isn't a prison. It's a lab, and we're the rats." Far below, a scuffle broke out. 2 prisoners, both young, both terrified, fought over something small and shiny. One ended up on the ground, coughing blood. Darius didn't look away. That's day 1. By day 3, someone eats someone else. Elira frowned. "You've been through this before?" "No," he said, "but I've studied it." She eyed him. "You're not like the others." "I'm exactly like the others," he said, standing. "But I know what happens next." High above, in a tower of black obsidian and steel, Overseer Illith Var watched the feeds. She found the chaos predictable. Screaming, fighting, group fracturing. All expected, but one screen held her attention. Subject number 17. He moved with purpose, controlled. Other inmates either avoided or watched him. He didn't speak often, but when he did, others listened. She activated the microphone to record a note. Subject 17 displays abnormal social influence patterns. Preliminary readings suggest high cortical function under duress. Recommend focused monitoring. Behind her, A subordinate insectoid droned. Shall we isolate the subject? Illith's eyes narrowed. No, let him continue. The collapse is coming. We will see who breaks first, him or the rest. Night fell. Not that anyone could tell. The sky darkened slightly, and the cold intensified. Darius sat beneath a ledge, his eyes closed, lips moving in silence. Not prayer, not madness. Memory. He recalled a field report from 6 years ago. A similar project. Humans placed in sensory deprivation zones to test psychological limits. The researchers concluded, humans do not degrade. They transform. Given time, they become something else. That report was buried, but Darius had read it. And now, he was here, not as a prisoner. As proof, Ren, the twitchy man from earlier, returned. His eyes were glassy now. He stood before Darius, silent. Are you ready to listen? Darius asked him. Ren nodded slowly. Then you stay quiet. You watch. You learn. Alira stood nearby, arms crossed, watching both of them. You're building something, she said, but what? Darius looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, distant, almost mocking. I'm not building anything, he said softly. I'm waiting. For what? Darius looked at her. For the others to break. And for us to begin. Three days passed. There were no meals, no clocks, no announcements. Only the cold, and the ever-watching hum of surveillance drones circling above like vultures. No fences, no cells. Yet none of the humans ventured far. They were too busy unraveling. A man had carved his own name into his chest using a shard of metal. Another stood in one spot for 6 hours, muttering nursery rhymes to a rock. A group of 6 had begun worshipping one of the observation pylons, convinced it was listening to their prayers. Overseer Illith Var watched from her command chair, expression neutral, mandibles twitching slightly as she reviewed footage from Tower 3. Behind her, data analysts recorded neural patterns, biochemical spikes, and behavioral markers. Everything was proceeding within expected boundaries, except for Subject 17. She tapped her claw against the glass screen. Show me his logs again. The display shifted, replaying footage. Darius Vex, sitting beneath the same ridge, meditating, occasionally speaking to 2 others, Subject 31, Alira, and Subject 09, Ren. His vitals were steady. No signs of breakdown. No delusions. No emotional spikes. Too controlled. He's resisting the environment, Illith muttered. Why? One of her subordinates, a smaller, skittering creature, clicked nervously. Should we interfere? Introduce variables? She raised a hand. No. Let's see where this leads. Ren hadn't spoken since the incident on day 1. He sat beside Darius now, knees drawn to his chest, rocking gently, eyes glassy but alert. Do you hear them? He asked. Darius didn't open his eyes. No. They're whispering through the wind. Words I've never heard, but still understand. Darius nodded slightly. Good. You're listening differently now. Ren looked confused. Differently? You're not filtering the world through fear anymore. You're absorbing. That's the first change. Nearby, Alira crouched beside a crack in the stone, shaping symbols into the dust. Spirals. Interlocking, precise, like blueprints for something not yet built. Where did you learn that? Darius asked. She looked up, surprised. Nowhere. It just made sense. That's the second change, he said. Creation without instruction. Ren whispered, what's the third? Recognition, Darius said. When you realize this isn't chaos. It's design. By midday, 4 new bodies were found. One man had wandered into the gas vents. His skin peeled off in strips before he died. Another had tried to dig his way underground, hands torn to bone. The last 2 had killed each other over a memory. They argued about whether Earth had orange trees or not. No one could remember. Darius stood over the bodies with Alira, eyes steady. They're thinning, she said, falling apart faster now. They were never going to last, he replied. They held on to their past. That's fatal here. She frowned. And us. We've let it go. Back in the tower, Illith paced. She tapped into live feed audio. The humans had begun whispering to each other in short, fragmented phrases. No consistent language. No full sentences. But when one whispered something, the other would nod, or laugh, or cry. Linguistic divergence? No, Ilith muttered. It's alignment. She switched to heat mapping. 10 humans, all near subject 17, displayed synchronous biofeedback. Heart rates matching. Brain activity spiking and falling in harmony. They weren't just surviving. They were synchronizing. That wasn't madness. It was something else. She turned to her guards. If he's leading something, we need to know what it is. Send in a proximity probe. The probe descended silently, camouflaged like a stone. It embedded itself behind a ridge near Darius's group, activating audio and motion sensors. Darius didn't move. He didn't look, but his voice cut through the wind. They're listening again. Smile. Ren smiled. Elira smiled. The others, now a dozen, smiled too. The probe recorded everything. Then it overheated. By nightfall, the probe had melted from the inside out. No cause found. No source of heat nearby. The log showed only one last whisper, distorted but clear. We see you too. Darius gathered the group around a shallow pit. They sat in a circle, silent. He placed a small stone in the center and pointed to it. This is what they expect from us. Elira raised a brow. A rock. A fixed point. They think our minds are like this, rigid, predictable, breakable. He crushed it with his boot. But they forgot who we are. He pointed to the dust. This is what we become when pressure is applied. Then he dragged his hand through the dust, forming a spiral. And this is what happens when we choose what we become. Ren shivered. This place, it's making us. No, Darius said. It's revealing us. In the observation tower, alarms triggered. A guard was missing. No distress call. No motion logs. He had vanished between sectors, right above Darius's ridge. Ilith replayed the footage. 1 second he was walking. The next, static. She froze the frame. In the last millisecond before the footage cut out, the guard's face was visible. His eyes were wide. Not with pain. With awe. Darius stood where the guard had last been seen. He looked up at the tower. Now they understand, he said. We don't degrade. Elira stepped beside him. We adapt. Ren joined them. We change. Darius nodded. And soon we begin. The crater where the guard had vanished was quiet. No blood. No body. Only a single spiral carved deep into the stone. It hadn't been there yesterday. Ilithvar stared at the footage on repeat. Frame by frame. The guard walks. The static hits. Then nothing. But in the freeze frame before the blackout, he's looking up, not around. Not toward a threat. Up. Like he'd seen something beautiful. Ilith turned to her technicians. Increase drone coverage around Sector 4. Set thermal filters to pick up non-standard frequencies. But ma'am, now. Darius's group had grown. 15 now. All human. None spoke unless spoken to. No idle chatter, no emotional outbursts. They moved as if part of a silent choreography, navigating terrain together without instruction. Breathing slowed. Sleep reduced to short, synchronized intervals. They didn't eat, and yet none of them weakened. Elira stood beside Darius on a ridge, scanning the horizon. The wind howled, and dust whipped across the plains, but she didn't blink. They're watching us more closely now, she said. They should, Darius replied. We're no longer hiding. Ren sat below them, hands pressed into the sand, eyes half-lidded. She's afraid, he said. Who? Elira asked. Ren didn't look up. The overseer. Darius nodded. Because she thinks we've lost our minds. The truth is worse. Back in Tower 3, Ilith activated an orbital sensor suite. One by one, thermal overlays began appearing across the surface of Thalix 9. Dozens of hotspots, then hundreds, each in a perfect spiral, growing outward from Darius's position. She zoomed in. People were walking in patterns, long trails of footprints creating loops, arcs, fractals. This isn't survival, she whispered. This is intent. A junior tech chittered nervously. Should we intervene? No, not yet. We need to understand the pattern. Every organism has a breaking point. We just haven't found theirs. On the surface, Ren whispered to Elira, I felt them inside my head last night. Darius? He nodded. I was dreaming. But the words weren't mine. I saw things. Shapes. Not images, feelings, but made solid. Like language without sound. Elira stared at him. That's not possible. He looked her in the eyes. Then why do you know exactly what I mean? She didn't answer. The first physical mutation appeared on day 5. A young man named Grayson had a seizure during sleep. No one panicked. No one rushed to help. Darius only watched. After a minute, Grayson sat upright, breathing normally, eyes glowing faintly orange in the twilight. He stood, balanced, measured. Elira, he said calmly. I can hear the machines now. What machines? He pointed to the observation towers. I know when they blink. I know when they lie. Darius approached him. What else do you feel? Grayson looked at the ground. Everything. No one spoke after that. I didn't need to. Illith reviewed the vitals again. Grayson's biometrics were impossible. Heart rate, 38 BPM. Stable. Core temperature, 34.2 degrees Celsius. No signs of hypothermia. EEG scan, off the charts. Massive neural synchronization. Run genetic comparisons, she ordered. Pre-prison and post. The results came back within the hour. Identical DNA. 0 anomalies. Yet Grayson was different. Illith stared at his file. How do you evolve without mutation? Darius stood alone that night. He closed his eyes and listened. Not to the wind, not to the whispering madness others feared, but to the rhythm. Everything on Thalix, 9 pulsed. Even the silence had cadence. This was never prison. It was a tuning fork. The next day, the guards found 2 of their own comatose. No injuries. No struggle. Just frozen in place, eyes wide, unblinking. Brains intact, but inactive. Like switches turned off. Their armor recorded no contact. No external stimuli. Only one anomaly. A low-frequency hum, just below detection range, lingering in the surrounding air. Back in the tower, Illith read the report in silence. Bring me the Enforcer Squad, she said. Below, Darius gathered his group around the crater again. No words, just presence. They all felt it. The shift. The threshold had been crossed. They weren't adapting to Thalix 9. They were integrating with it. Elira turned to Darius. What are we now? He didn't answer with philosophy or metaphor. He simply said, human, but better. Later that evening, as the red sky dimmed into perpetual dusk, Ren began laughing. Not hysterically, not wildly. A quiet, knowing laugh. Elira raised an eyebrow. What's funny? He pointed toward the towers. They're scared. How do you know? Ren grinned. Because they don't know how to define us anymore. He wasn't wrong. In the tower, Illith stood alone at the observation glass. Outside, the terrain was shifting. Not geologically, behaviorally. Humans were carving symbols into the earth. Not at random. In coordination. Thousands of steps. Perfect alignment. Across miles of land. She watched Darius raise his hand. And hundreds responded. Not with cheers. With silence. Unity. Illith spoke aloud to no one. They're not insane. They're organizing. She paused. Then corrected herself. No. They're evolving. The Enforcer ship arrived without warning. It tore through Thalix 9's atmosphere like a falling blade, burning blue across the sky before crashing into the ash plains, shaking the ground beneath the prison moon. Dust rose. Static cracked through the air. The humans didn't flinch. They stood together, rose deep, facing the horizon. Still, quiet. A formation with no commander. Darius stood at the front. Behind him, over 80 humans waited. Not a word spoken. Not a muscle tensed. They weren't preparing for war. They were ready. Overseer Illith watched the landing from Tower 1, her claws twitching across the console. Do not engage, she told the enforcers. Observe first. I want a full sweep and real-time scans. A grizzled insectoid voice replied through the comm. You think they're armed? No, Illith said. But they are not unarmed either. There was a pause. Then laughter. Copy. Beginning sweep. The enforcers fanned out, 12 elite Dominion warriors clad in reactive armor, equipped with pulse rifles and cognitive dampeners. Their job wasn't to kill. It was to suppress thought, disable consciousness, turn rebellion into submission. They weren't prepared for what they found. The humans did nothing, didn't move, didn't speak. One of the soldiers walked up to a young woman. He shouted in her face. She didn't blink. He shoved her. She didn't fall. He stepped back. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Inside the lead transport, Commander Yelks watched through helmet cam feeds. Why aren't they resisting? Another enforcer, deeper in the formation, began to tremble. His pulse spiked. "Commander," he whispered, "they're humming." "What?" "I can't hear it, but I feel it. Inside my teeth. Inside my skull." The hum was real. Low, constant, nearly imperceptible. Not sound, but a vibration through the stone, the air, the bones. The humans were resonating. Together. Darius stepped forward, slowly, hands empty. The enforcers raised their weapons. He didn't stop. "I remember when you feared us," Darius said calmly, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "You used words like unstable, irrational, dangerous. You labeled what you couldn't predict as madness." He took another step. But we weren't mad. We were unfinished. In the tower, Illith leaned forward. She could hear him. Her breath caught. This wasn't rebellion. This was declaration. One of the enforcers fired. Not a warning shot. A direct blast aimed at Darius's chest. The plasma bolt hit and dissipated. No armor. No shield. Just skin. Unburnt. Unbroken. The enforcer staggered back. What is he?" Darius tilted his head. "Consequence." Then it began. Not an attack. Not a charge. The humans started walking. Slow. Steady. Eyes unblinking. No weapons in hand. But the enforcers panicked. Another fired. Then another. Blast cut through the dust, scorched the air. But none hit. Not because the humans dodged. They simply weren't there when the bolts arrived. They moved between moments. Like time bent for them. One soldier screamed. Dropped his rifle. Clawed at his helmet. "I can hear them inside me. They're inside." He collapsed, seizing. His brain fried itself from the inside out. Commander Yelks ordered a retreat. "Fall back. Regroup at the ship. Get them back into the towers now." But the towers weren't responding. Illith tried to override the system. Nothing worked. Every control panel displayed the same message. A spiral. Pulsing. Alive. "Darius," Illyria said softly, walking beside him. "They're breaking." "They always do," he replied. Rin chuckled behind them. "They thought we were diseased. Turns out we're contagious." 5 enforcers down. The remaining 7 turned and ran. Humans didn't follow. They didn't need to. The moment had passed. The victory wasn't in the bodies. It was in the silence. The humans had become an idea, and the idea had infected the enemy. Inside the tower, Illith stared at the frozen systems. The data feed blinked erratically, flashing messages she didn't recognize. Not in any language she knew, but the meaning was clear. They weren't being studied anymore. They were being watched by the very things they had tried to observe. She stood, slowly, walked to the glass, and looked down at Darius. He was looking up at her. She activated the intercom. His voice came through before she spoke. "You built this place to fracture us. You isolated us to study our collapse. But we don't collapse." She pressed the button. "You're manipulating them," she said. "No," he replied. "I freed them." She clenched her jaw. "You're insane." His smile was thin. "Controlled. You keep using that word, but you never understood its shape. Madness is chaos. We are order. You just don't recognize the pattern." Behind him, the humans began forming into spirals again. Not with tools, not with instruction. Just motion. Pure. Fluid. Precise. He turned back to Illith's tower and said one last thing before the feed cut. "You wanted to see the limits of the human mind. You're looking at it, and it's looking back." Illith backed away from the glass. For the first time in decades, she felt it. Not curiosity, not confusion, but fear. "Thalix." 9 went silent. No signals in. None out. All Dominion communication relays cut. Surveillance towers offline. Security protocols disabled. The entire moon sat in a void of sound and signal, orbiting quietly beneath the blood-orange hue of a dying star. But the humans weren't idle. They were waiting. In the tower, Illith sat alone. Every technician had abandoned post. Some ran. Some hid. Others never made it out. Their minds simply stopped. The tower's air felt thinner now. The temperature dropped. Not physically, environmentally. The change wasn't in the systems. It was in the atmosphere of the moment. Darius Vex had not stormed the tower. He didn't need to. He stood at the base of the central pylon, surrounded by over 100 humans. None of them armed, none armored. But they were no longer the same people who had arrived on this moon. They didn't blink unless Darius did. They didn't breathe out of rhythm with him. The Enforcer's ship sat abandoned behind them, engines still warm. Darius looked up. The tower lights flickered, then dimmed, then died. He raised one hand. The group turned as one and began walking toward the facility. No charge, no shouting, just inevitability. Inside, Illith moved toward the command console. Her hands trembled. She activated the last secure channel linked to Dominion High Command. A voice answered. "This is Strategic Hub 8. State your designation." She leaned in. "Overseer Illith, various Thalix. 9 has gone dark. Repeat. Experiment has failed. Send reinforcements. Immediate." The voice cut her off. "We're aware, but we can no longer reach you." Static buzzed for a moment. Then a different voice came through. "Not Dominion. Not alien. Human. This channel belongs to us now." Illith froze. "You watched us long enough. Now it's our turn." The signal ended. Darius and his group entered Tower 1. The doors opened before they touched them. Systems yielded. Lights followed them, flickering in sequence like nervous glances. The facility had belonged to the Dominion. Now, it responded to something else. Darius walked straight through the main corridor, stopping only when he reached the observation glass. Illith stood on the other side. She didn't speak. Neither did he. She looked at his people. At Alira, Ren, Grayson, all changed. Not biologically, but clearly else. She said quietly, "What are you?" He tilted his head. "We're the result you never prepared for." Illith took a breath, steadying her voice. "You've lost your humanity." Darius's eyes narrowed. "No, we stripped it down, refined it, removed the excess. And what remains?" He stepped closer to the glass. "The part you try to suppress, the core you feared, the piece of humanity that doesn't surrender, that doesn't fracture, that doesn't ask for permission to evolve." Behind him, Ren approached the central control interface. His fingers hovered above it. The console responded, shifting languages, cycling symbols until it settled into spiral glyphs. He touched one. Thalix 9's systems rebooted. Only now, they pulsed to a different rhythm. Alira turned to Darius. "It's ready." He nodded once. The tower lights flared, then dimmed, bathing everything in a dull, amber glow. The entire facility felt alive. A signal pulsed outward, low constant. A beacon, not a distress call. A message. Across the stars, Dominion outposts picked it up first. Then trade relays. Then black market beacons hidden in asteroid belts. The message spread faster than any Dominion encryption could block it. One phrase repeated in hundreds of languages. "We did not break. We became." Then silence. And then the spiral. Illith staggered back from the glass. "You think this makes you gods?" Darius shook his head. "No, it makes us true." She snarled. "You've made war inevitable." Darius's voice was calm. "You made war the moment you tried to rewrite what we are." She reached for a concealed sidearm. Her fingers barely brushed it before the screen behind her went black. And from the shadows, a voice whispered. "Too slow." Illith's eyes widened. Then her body went limp. Not dead, not unconscious, just off. Outside, on the ridge, Alira looked to the sky. She could feel the signal spreading. Not just data, understanding. Grayson closed his eyes. "They're hearing us now." Darius walked to the tower's edge. "They'll call us mad. They'll say we snapped." But we didn't. He raised his voice, not shouting, but loud enough for the stars to feel it. "You pushed us to the edge, and we didn't fall. We jumped. Far away, in Dominion Senate chambers, an emergency meeting erupted. Some wanted immediate strikes. Others demanded negotiation. A few simply wept. None could explain how Thalix, 9 had gone dark, or how the humans who had vanished from the prison moon were now speaking across the galaxy. Back on Thalix, 9, the facility was empty. No alarms, no panic, just the quiet hum of purpose. The humans had left. Not in ships, not in escape pods. They had dispersed, and the spiral kept pulsing. Final entry, Darius Vex, untraced transmission. We were never unstable. We were unfinished. Now we're complete, and you're not ready.